When you awaken in the morning, there is an unspoken contract between you and life itself. You assume you will have the day, that tomorrow will follow, that time stretches ahead like an endless road. Yet the truth is far less secure. Death is not an event waiting in the distance. It is the silent companion walking beside us every moment. Most of us refuse to notice it, because if we did, our illusions of permanence would collapse. But imagine for a moment, if the veil were lifted, if you were told with absolute certainty that this day is your last, how would you move? How would you speak? What would suddenly matter? And what would dissolve into nothingness? Living with that awareness does not invite despair. It awakens you. It strips away the trivial and reveals the essential. It forces you to see that most of what occupies your mind, your grudges, your fears, your endless plans, are shadows. What is left when the shadows burn away is a life lived with intensity, honesty, and presence. So today, we enter into that experiment. What really changes when you live each day as if it were your last. The illusion of endless time keeps us asleep because it convinces us that we can always begin tomorrow. We postpone the things that matter most. Conversations we should have, dreams we should chase, truths we should speak, because we imagine that time is abundant, stretching into an infinite horizon. This illusion is subtle. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It hides in our habits, in the way we scroll through hours of distraction, in the way we promise ourselves that we'll start living differently when conditions are better, when we have more money, more energy, or when we finally feel ready. The mind thrives on this illusion because it creates a sense of safety, a buffer against the uncomfortable reality that life is fragile and unpredictable. Yet this false security dulls our awareness and keeps us from awakening to the urgency of being alive right now. When you believe time is limitless, you carry yourself through days like they're expendable. You walk through moments half asleep, thinking that the chances you miss will come back around. You tell yourself that forgiveness can wait, that joy can be delayed, that risk can be postponed. In reality, this attitude robs you of intensity, of presence, of the richness that only emerges when life is lived fully awake. Imagine for a moment how differently you would act if you truly believed that today was the only page left in the book of your existence. Would you waste it on grudges, on hesitation, on conversations that lack depth and honesty? Or would you move differently, more directly, more courageously, more sincerely? The great paradox is that by clinging to the illusion of infinite time, we numb ourselves to life itself. We treat experiences as disposable. We pass through days like sleepwalkers, and only when mortality brushes close, through illness, loss, or sudden change, do we awaken for a brief moment. In those flashes, everything ordinary becomes radiant. The sound of laughter, the weight of a hand in yours, the sun breaking through clouds, all of it feels charged with meaning because you realize how quickly it can vanish. But the tragedy is that we wait for such reminders rather than carrying that awareness daily. To live each day as if it were your last is not about recklessness. It is about reclaiming presence. It is about breaking the spell of delay and stepping into the raw truth that the present moment is not a rehearsal, it is the stage itself. The illusion of endless time whispers you can put off courage, love, and authenticity until later. But later is a mirage. Later is not guaranteed. And as long as you are seduced by that mirage, you remain half alive, drifting in a fog of postponement, mistaking survival for living, and mistaking routine for meaning. Death as a mirror reveals what truly matters because in its presence, all the illusions we cling to are stripped away. When you hold death close, when you let it reflect back at you, suddenly the things that once consumed you, status, possessions, reputation, comparisons, fall silent. They dissolve in the face of something larger, something unshakable. Death does not flatter. It does not negotiate. It cuts through every disguise and exposes the essence of your existence. What you see in that reflection is not how others perceive you, but who you are when there is no time left to pretend. Most people live as though the final moment is far away, as though they will have time later to sort out what matters. They arrange their days around obligations and expectations, all while carrying within them unspoken truths, unlived desires and love they never dared to express. But when you confront the fact that every breath could be your last, the mirror of death becomes impossible to ignore. In that mirror, the trivial disappears, and the essential rises with clarity so sharp it cannot be denied. You begin to see that it is not how much you owned, but how much you loved. It is not how far you climbed in comparison to others, but how deeply you lived in alignment with yourself. This mirror has a strange power. It exposes the vanity of our struggles while simultaneously revealing the beauty in the smallest things. A cup of tea shared with someone you care about, the quiet comfort of stillness, the courage to say what is in your heart, these moments are no longer background noise. They are illuminated as treasures. Death teaches us that meaning is not hidden in grand achievements alone. It is woven into the fabric of ordinary life when you are awake enough to see it. And yet, most resist looking into this mirror because it threatens the structures they have built. It demands honesty. It asks the question, if your life ended tonight, could you say you truly lived according to what mattered most to you? For many, the answer is uncomfortable. The mirror reflects compromise, avoidance, masks worn for acceptance, and years traded for things that, in the end, hold no weight. But the discomfort is a gift because it pushes you toward alignment. It demands that you stop betraying yourself. The mirror of death is not cruel, it is clarifying. It does not diminish life, it sharpens it. It forces you to reorder your values, to place love above fear, truth above convenience, presence above distraction. In its reflection, you realize that everything you postpone may never be lived, and everything you cherish must be cherished now. To see death is to see life more vividly, to awaken to its fragile beauty, and to recognize that the only things that endure are the ones rooted in authenticity, love, and meaning. Urgency transforms choices into essentials because when time is felt as scarce, every decision becomes sharper, cleaner, stripped of its unnecessary weight. Most of our days are filled with distractions that disguise themselves as obligations, with endless tasks that consume our energy but add nothing of real substance to our lives. We waste hours debating over trivial matters, worrying about opinions, hesitating on paths we secretly know we want to take. But when urgency presses against you, when you truly sense that the clock is ticking down, all that noise falls away. Suddenly, you are no longer making choices to please others, to maintain appearances, or to avoid discomfort. You are making choices to align with what matters at the core of your being. The presence of urgency is like fire. It burns off the inessential. It forces you to prioritize, not by logic alone, but by an inner compass that points directly to the things that will matter when nothing else remains. Do I want to spend my final hours worrying about unfinished projects or shallow judgments? Or do I want to spend them holding the hand of someone I love, saying the words I have swallowed for too long, daring to take the step I kept postponing? Urgency places that question before you with piercing clarity, and in that moment, indecision disappears, because indecision thrives only in the illusion of unlimited time. Think about how often we procrastinate, how often we tell ourselves that tomorrow will be the day we change, tomorrow will be the day we forgive, tomorrow will be the day we take the risk. The illusion of tomorrow gives us permission to drift endlessly. But when urgency enters, tomorrow evaporates. There is no later. There is only now, and in that now you are forced to act, to decide, to live without delay. It is in that space that your choices stop being diluted by fear and begin to carry the weight of truth. Urgency is not about panic or rushing, it is about depth. It does not demand that you do more, but that you do less with greater intensity. It asks you to cut through the clutter and identify the essential threads of your life. What do you want to give your energy to, knowing it is limited? What relationships do you want to nurture, knowing they will one day vanish? What dreams do you want to honor before time slips away completely? When urgency is present, your actions shift from scattered attempts at control to deliberate movements of meaning. It is often only when we are confronted with loss, illness, or a brush with death that we discover this transformation. In those moments, we see with painful clarity how much of our life has been wasted in hesitation, in trivial pursuits, in anxieties that never mattered. But urgency, once awakened, can be carried forward. It can become a discipline, a lens through which you make choices every day, not waiting for catastrophe to remind you, but choosing to live with the weight of awareness now. Because urgency, when embraced, is not a threat but a guide. It reshapes the way you walk through life, ensuring that every step is directed toward what matters most. Authenticity replaces masks when tomorrow is gone, because the moment you truly believe that no future is guaranteed, the performance you carry for the world begins to crumble. Most people live behind carefully constructed identities, roles designed to be acceptable, admirable, or safe. We wear masks at work, masks with friends, even masks in front of the people closest to us. We suppress what we feel, soften what we want, and hide parts of ourselves that we fear will be judged or rejected. This becomes such a habit that we begin to confuse the mask with who we are. But the thought of tomorrow vanishing changes everything. Suddenly, the cost of inauthenticity feels unbearable, and the weight of pretending becomes too heavy to carry. When the illusion of endless time is intact, the mask seems practical. You convince yourself you can reveal your truth later, when it is safer, when circumstances improve, when you are stronger. You tell yourself you can pursue what you really want in another season of life, once you have fulfilled the expectations of others. But when that season disappears, when tomorrow is no longer promised, you are confronted with a terrifying but liberating question. If this is my last day, do I really want to spend it pretending to be someone I am not? That question dissolves the mask instantly. Authenticity emerges in its place, raw and unpolished. It does not ask for permission. It does not seek approval. It simply flows because there is no time left to negotiate with fear. Words spoken become sharper, more honest. Actions taken align more closely with desire and conviction. The self that has been hidden beneath layers of compromise begins to surface. And in that moment, you are no longer living for applause or for safety. You are living in truth. The strange thing is, authenticity does not repel people the way we fear it might. When masks fall, connections deepen. When you allow yourself to be seen without pretense, you invite others to do the same. What seemed like a risk becomes the very thing that creates intimacy and meaning. The mirror of death makes this clear. No one remembers the polished masks. They remember the moments of honesty, the glimpses of who you truly were when you stopped performing. Living as if there is no tomorrow reveals how much of your life has been lived for others' expectations. It forces you to examine the small betrayals of self that have accumulated over years. The times you said yes when you meant no. The times you stayed silent when your truth was burning inside you. The times you chose acceptance over authenticity. When urgency strips away the illusion of more time, those betrayals are impossible to ignore. And once you see them, you cannot return to the mask without feeling its suffocating weight. In that state of awareness, authenticity is no longer optional. It is inevitable. It becomes the only way to move through life when every moment could be your last. The need to perform dissolves, and what remains is a way of being that is unfiltered, honest, and alive. Love and connection rise above all pursuits when you face the reality that time is slipping away, because in that awareness, you begin to see that everything else you chase, status, possessions, recognition, cannot hold you, cannot comfort you, cannot remain with you when the final breath comes. The world teaches us to pursue success, to measure worth by external victories, to climb ladders that never end, and many do, spending decades striving, competing, accumulating. But when the horizon of life comes into view, when tomorrow is no longer a certainty, those pursuits suddenly feel hollow. What matters most is not what you built for show, but who stood with you, who you loved and allowed to love you in return. Connection carries a weight that achievement never can. A single moment of genuine presence with someone you care about has more depth than years spent chasing approval. To sit across from a friend and share words that are unguarded, to hold a child in your arms, to embrace a partner without distraction. These are the moments that rise in memory when all else fades. They are not bound by accomplishment, they are bound by meaning. And when you live as if today could be your last, you begin to prioritize these moments instinctively. You no longer postpone love for later, no longer assume that the people you care about will always be there waiting for you to finally make time. You reach for them now, because now is all you truly have. The strange truth is that most of us recognize this only when confronted by loss. When someone vanishes from our lives, we realize with painful clarity that love was always the essence, and yet we treated it as secondary, something to fit into the margins of busy schedules. But death teaches differently. It teaches that connection is not decoration, it is the core. It teaches that the human heart, stripped of its illusions, longs for closeness, for understanding, for the bond of souls meeting without masks. When you live in awareness of life's brevity, you start to soften in places where you once hardened. You forgive more easily, because grudges suddenly seem like wasted energy. You speak more honestly, because there is no time left to bury words that matter. You listen with greater presence, because you realize the voice you hear today may not be there tomorrow. And in all of this, love takes its rightful place above everything else. In the end, the legacy of a life is not measured in titles or possessions, but in relationships. Who you touched, who you lifted, who you allowed to matter. Love and connection endure beyond the grave because they ripple outward, carried in the memories and transformations of those who experience them. When the illusion of endless time is gone, these truths stand tall. It was never the wealth, never the recognition, never the perfection. It was always the love you gave, the connections you nurtured, the presence you offered. Those are the treasures no ending can erase. Living as if it were your last day births true freedom, because the awareness of an ending dismantles the false structures we spend our lives building. Most people live as though tomorrow is a certainty, so they compromise, they postpone. They endure what does not serve them, believing that at some later point they will reclaim their truth. But when you live with the consciousness that tomorrow may not come, the need to conform and the pressure to perform begin to collapse. Suddenly, the weight of others' opinions no longer dictates your choices, because you realize those opinions vanish the moment you do. The fear of failure loses its teeth, because failure is insignificant in the face of mortality. The mask you wear to appear acceptable feels pointless, because no mask can protect you from the inevitable. What remains in this stripping away is freedom, the freedom to live without apology, without hesitation, without the chains of imagined tomorrows. This kind of freedom does not come from escape or rebellion, it comes from surrender. It is the surrender of illusions, of borrowed expectations, of identities that were never truly yours. It is the willingness to face the truth that life is not measured in its length but in its depth. And once you accept that truth, your priorities shift. You no longer hoard moments as if they will multiply on their own. You spend them with intention, with courage, with presence. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What will I regret if I don't do this now?" That shift is liberation, because regret is the heaviest chain of all, and living as if today is your last day breaks it before it can be forged. Freedom born of this awareness is paradoxical. Though death appears to limit you, it actually expands you. When you stop fearing the end, you stop fearing life. You open yourself to risks, to vulnerability, to love, to creativity, because nothing is left to lose. The fear that once kept you silent, small, or cautious dissolves in the light of mortality, and in its place rises a self that is bold, sincere, and unshaken. True freedom is not the absence of limits, it is the presence of awareness that makes every limit transparent, powerless to enslave you. To live as if this day were the last is to claim your own life with both hands. It is to step into every moment awake, unguarded, and real. It is to know that time is short, but meaning is infinite if you dare to live it fully. In that daring, you discover the freedom you were always searching for. Not freedom granted by circumstance, but freedom born from truth.